Hey everybody, in this video I'm going to walk through this problem. So this was the original problem. We want to write a program that prints out a grid of numbers like this. So you see here there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rows, and so the numbers kind of go in this triangular pattern there. So we're going to solve a similar problem. In this one, we're going to write a program that inputs a character from the user and the number of rows in our grid. And then the program is going to print out a triangular grid of that many rows containing the inputted character. So for example, let's walk through something here. So let's suppose a user enters, so make this a little bigger. Let's say the user enters a star sign as a symbol, and then number of rows is going to be 4. So then our program should output a bunch of stars and 4 rows of this. Let's do one more example. If the user types in, say, a $sign and the number 3, then we should get 1, 3 rows like that. Okay. So yeah, that's what we're trying to do. So let's think about the pseudocode here. First of all, one observation. Let's suppose you number the rows, right? You have 1, 2, 3, 4. Row 1 is number 1, row 2 is number 2, and so on. Whatever this number is, we print out that many stars, right? So on row 1, we print out 1 star. Row 2, we print out 2 stars. Row 3, 3 stars, and so on. Okay, so just hold on to that insight. So now, here's what our pseudocode can be. So first of all, we're going to input the symbol, and we'll input the number of rows. Let's say that's n. Now, whatever n is, if n is 4, we are going to have 4 rows. If n is 5, we're going to have 5 rows. So let's think about a loop here. We'll probably need a loop for that, right? We'll use a loop to go from 1 to n. And we'll print out, the purpose of this loop is going to be to print out n rows. So we haven't thought about what will be in that row yet, but we do know there's going to be n rows. So let's think about what's going to go inside that row. Now, it's going to be helpful to have another variable here. So it says we're going to go from 1 to n. Usually we have a loop counter, like int I, inside our loop. So let's say that we have this variable I that goes from 1 to n. So in other words, you can imagine we write I up here. So I is going to be 1, I is going to be 2, I is going to be 3, I is going to be 4. If n is 4 in that case. So now we have this variable I that goes from 1 to n. The next thing we're going to do is within the loop, right? We're going to print out I symbols. Right? So if it's a star, and if it's I is 1, here we'll print out 1 symbol, because I is 1. If I is 2, we'll print out 2 symbols. So that would be right here, 2 symbols, and so on. So how are we going to print out I symbols? So for that, we can have another loop, an inner loop here. So within the loop, right, we'll use another loop to print out I symbols. This is our pseudocode, basically. The loop is going to run I times. So this is roughly what we're doing here. I'll just say it again. We're going to input the symbol and the number n. We're going to use a loop to go from 1 to n. And so I is going to go from 1 to n. Within the loop, we'll have another loop that runs I times. And that's how we'll print out the I characters on each row. Okay, so that's our pseudocode. Next step, let's figure out how to solve a simpler version of that problem. So to start with, we're just going to print out n rows, and we'll just have one character on each row. So in this example here, instead of printing out the whole pyramid of stars, our output's just going to be like that. Just 4 rows, 1 star on each row. So let's see how we would do that. Okay, we're going to using namespace std, and let's see. We're gonna, if we look at our pseudocode here, we're gonna input the symbol and the number n. Let's do that. Oops. So let's have car symbol and int n. And so we can, let's just put a little message here, enter symbol and number of rows. So we can see in the symbol and the number of rows, which is n. So we got that done. And then we're going to have a loop that goes from 1 to n. So we can have for int I equals 0, I is less than n, I plus plus. And in step 1, we're just going to print out one character on each row. So we can print out symbol followed by, let's put the end L on a separate line. That'll be useful to us later, I believe. And that's it. Let's see what we get. Okay, let me just make that a little bigger. Okay, enter symbol and number of rows. Let's say star and the number 4. So we get 4 stars. Great. Okay, version 1 is done. Let me insert table. Boom. Okay. Now let's think about version 2. Instead of printing out 1 star or 1 character on each row, let's print out a grid of characters. So let's say we'll have n characters on each of the n rows. So let's suppose they type in £sign and the number 3, then our output should be like this. Okay, so to do that, inside this loop, instead of printing out 1 symbol, we're going to have to print out n symbols. So we're going to have another loop here that does that. So we'll go for int, let's pick a different loop counter variable. J goes from 0, and let's say j is going to go till n, right? So we want n symbols. And so we'll print out another thing there. Oh, oops. We'll print out symbol. We're going to print out n symbols, and then at the very end, we're going to put an end-L to end that row of symbols. Okay, so let's try that. Let me just make that a little bigger. So we've got, let's say £sign and 3. So look at that, we got it, and so on. I probably want to put a space after each one, so let's do that. Got it. I don't know, it kind of depends on what the code check is asking you, but I think it looks better with the space right now. Let's do, there you go. Okay, so version 2 is done. Sorry, that was step 3. Oh. Okay, so now the final step here is we don't want to have this a square looking grid. We want to have a triangular grid. So we just want these here. So let's go back to our pseudocode. How did we say we were going to do that? So given I, right, we have I here. We don't want to print out n symbols. We want to print out I symbols. So if I is 1, we only want to print out 1 symbol. If I is 2, we will print out 2 symbols. So this is actually a pretty small change. Instead of n, we're going to go to I. So think about that for a moment, right? If I is, so I goes from, I goes from 0 to n minus 1 actually, which is a little bit different than what we said, but let's see if that impacts us. So let's say I is 1, then the inner loop will go from 0 and then it'll stop. It just goes from 0 and then it stops because it won't go past 1. If I is 2, then j will become 0 and 1 and so on. Let's see what happens. So enter symbol and number of rows. Let me just clear this out. We can do the pound sign and then 3. Okay. So we're kind of getting there, but we are off by 1. So we can say let's pound and then 4. Okay. So let's fix this off by 1 thing, because remember in our pseudocode we said we're going to go from 1 to n, but here we actually go from 0 to n minus 1. So let's change this to a 1, and we'll change it to less than or equal to n. And I think this one can stay the same. So let's enter the symbol. There you go. That looks better. Okay, so there you go. That is the full process there. Let me put this here. All right, I hope that was helpful to get you started on the original problem.